Right, from that music clip to the bigger picture of the music industry. On the line right now we have Nick Matzukis, Director of the Academy of Sound Engineering. Welcome, Nick.
Hello, Brendan. Very nice to speak to you and to your listeners. Hi there.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Now, Nick, you've written a fairly comprehensive account of the dramatic metamorphosis of the music industry, looking at the effects of the internet on the industry, ranging from music piracy to the decline of sales and record sales, physical and digital, and the efforts to fight free music over the internet. Nick, what was the first big hint of a problem for old-style record labels thanks to the internet? Was it Napster?
Yeah, Napster was pretty much the first documented invasion of copyright on the internet. I guess because it was a highly successful model, one which worked very well, and one which allowed people to share music through Napster's servers at great ease. I mean, it really was a brilliantly written piece of software. Let's be honest, highly effective.
Okay, in the way, yeah, okay, rather a nefarious piece of software nonetheless. But Nick, what lessons were learned from the Napster problem?
Yeah, Brendan, I guess from the legal perspective, it would be fair to say that there's absolutely no doubt that people who were uploading and people who were downloading through Napster were committing copyright infringements. That's the first message that came through. But the second important message was that facilitation of copyright infringement itself. In other words, writing the software, providing the platform, is also an infringement of copyright, and this was established. The guy who set up Napster was a chap called Sean Fanning, and he was held liable for that. Very importantly, I think the message got through to the American public in particular that although there was this perception out there that because Napster was making music free, it should therefore be free. The fact that Napster was ultimately closed down and reopened as a proper copyright compliant download site was a message that came through to the public there loud and clear. And really, the person who made the most out of that was Steve Jobs when he introduced iTunes. But I guess another message that came out of it, because it was actually Metallica's drummer Lars Ulrich who first brought the action against Napster. The other message was that you can damage yourself in terms of public relations very badly if you don't handle problems like that properly. He came across as very aggressive and made comments like, if you're not prepared to pay for our music, then Metallica doesn't want you as a fan. Those kind of comments didn't go down very well. So illegal as the infringements may have been, the way it was handled was perhaps as important, and I think artists can take a lesson out of that.
Right, it places the artist in a very difficult position. Let's just look at the landscape currently. In 2012, you say that digital music turnover globally, I suspect, finally overtook physical format sales, except not in South Africa because we still pay so much for bandwidth and our internet connections are problematic. Is this actually a benefit to the local music industry? Because we sell about 70% still in physical formats. And is there a bigger margin on digital sales or physical format sales?
There's definitely a bigger margin on physical format sales, no doubt about that. It's certainly the most profitable form of recorded music sales, and there's no doubt about that. And remarkably enough, as South Africans, we seem to like holding on to stuff, if you know what I mean, Brendan. We kind of like tangible physical products. We're gift givers. We like to give it away as presents. We like to own it. I don't know if you know that South Africa was the last significant music market in which the cassette tape, for example, was jettisoned. We held on to that for as long as we possibly could, and I think the CD is going to go the same way in South Africa. We tend to like physical product, and we're still, as we speak, in terms of RISA's latest statistics, that's the Recording Industry Association of South Africa. We're still at around 70% of physical product in retail sales. But one's got to remember that the overall pie has dramatically reduced. And also the latest numbers out of RISA show that certainly digital is starting to make inroads into physical in a big way. Physical product sales have dropped by an average of 20% over the last 2 to 3 years. So it is starting to happen in South Africa as well. But unlike the UK and America, where in 2012 digital overtook physical for the first time, around the middle of the year. We have certain impediments to that here in South Africa. Bandwidth is not really bandwidth, as we all know. It's pretty slow still in South Africa. We also have very expensive data costs here. And quite frankly, the vast majority of the population in South Africa don't have access to broadband as many of us know it. So I guess the future of music is in that thing that we call the mobile handset. That's, remarkably enough, we have an 85% penetration of that in Africa as a continent. And if we can turn that into an affordable cost, then I think that's the future of music sales in South Africa.
Now, speaking of which, Nick, in your analysis of the music industry's history, you look at iTunes, Steve Jobs creating a platform that would allow listeners to pay for the songs they downloaded, and a percentage would obviously work its way back to the record labels and artists. But there's naturally a third party involved, and I find this a bit problematic. But before we get there, in the internet, anyone who has first mover advantage tends to dominate Google, Facebook, services like that bring everybody on board, and then they're reluctant to change to others. What challenges to iTunes have emerged, and what are their prospects?
Certainly. Internationally, iTunes are finding now that their sales are starting to level or plateau. And even in South Africa, where iTunes has only been a factor for about 18 months, we're already starting to see that trend. And in one simple word, the reason for that is streaming. There's a new music delivery model which has been active for a number of years now, and the companies that are pursuing this model are now starting to see dramatic inroads into the industry. I'm talking, of course, about Rhapsody, Spotify, Deezer, Simfy, which we have here in South Africa, these internet streaming services where the model is that you do not download the song, therefore you don't acquire a copy of it. You simply stream it online. Now, that's put in simplistic terms, because what a lot of these models do is also provide you the opportunity to stream offline, quote unquote, which is just another fancy way of saying, well, a copy is made to your handset, and then you can stream it even if you don't have Wi-Fi or an internet connection at that point. So it's somewhat more complicated than one would first think, but yes, indeed, this new model, which we call streaming, has certainly affected iTunes, and that's one of the reasons why they bought a streaming service recently called Beats. That was Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre's service, and they've seen it as a threat. They've identified it as a potential inroad into their income, and so they're getting onto that train as well.
Nick, my feeling of the main problem here is that there's still a third party involved in the in inverted commas, sale of this music. Will record labels still be around in 20 years, and is there a way they can reassert control over their product? And at the same time, can independent artists make it on their own?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, Brendan, and it really is the $64 million question. I mean, international writers like Bob Lefsetz have predicted that within 5 years, the record label as we know it will be gone. And he may well be right. But I think the emphasis would be on the words "as we know it," because those savvy record labels that are changing their business models and starting to diversify the way in which they make money are the ones who are going to survive. To put it in simplistic terms, the labels have come up with a new type of agreement with their artists, which they call the 360-degree contract. And what the presumption behind that contract is that instead of simply buying the copyrights in the master recordings and selling those recordings and making money out of those as they used to do, to great profitability in the 70s and 80s and 90s even, they now are saying, okay, we can't just make money out of your recordings anymore. We need to make money out of your other forms of income as well. And what you're going to lose on the swings, you're going to gain on the roundabouts. So give us not only the copyright in your recordings, but also the copyright in your compositions, which makes us your publisher now as well. Also give us the right to manage your touring, your merchandising, your sponsorships, your endorsements, all those other sources of income that you have, which now makes us your manager as well.
This sounds a little bit like Back to the Future, wasn't it that way in the 50s?
Yeah, it kind of was. It's almost like the thing has done full circle. Interestingly, a lot of people think that the 360-degree contract was invented in China, where there is basically no recording industry whatsoever. Why? Because in China, 95% of music recorded music that is consumed is pirated. So there, the record labels very early on started doing these types of deals. But actually, historically, in my research, I found out that South Africa was the first country to produce what we now recognize as a 360. There was a band called the Ragdolls back in the 60s that was signed to a label called Sunshine Records, and that label had their publishing, it had their recording, and it had their management and merchandising and all the other forms of income as well. But you're 100% right. This is where the industry started. We moved away and got these fragmented specialists, publishers, managers, record labels who were doing their own thing and all making money. Now